This we're about to buy Highland Titles, the perfect last-minute holiday gift, 20% off with code FILMENTO.
Don't.
Don't what?
Don't give me hope.
I'm sorry I couldn't give it to you sooner.
Hello everyone and welcome to FILMENTO, the #1 Pirates of the Caribbean fanboy channel, where today, as a new holiday tradition, we're gonna talk about Pirates of the Caribbean. Specifically, the first sequel in the franchise, Dead Man's Chest, a movie that a lot of you may have heard me call the best movie ever made. And sure, some of you may think I say that as a joke, sometimes I may think I say that as a joke, but every time I watch Dead Man's Chest, I'm reminded that it really isn't a joke, because this movie genuinely is made of the greatest movie components across the board. It has the most recognizable musical score from the most recognized film composer of our time. It has easily one of the most iconic and entertaining heroes ever put on screen. A hero so iconic that all sorts of videos about him get millions upon millions of views even years later. It is among the best looking action-adventure movies Hollywood has produced, in big part thanks to the fact that most of the elements here are real. It has incredible CGI work that is miles beyond the standard you're used to watching today, almost 2 decades later. It has the greatest massive water monster ever seen in a movie. I mean, the greatest massive monster ever seen in a movie, because it's not just there like these monsters usually are, it's in constant physical contact with the world around it, which must have been a pain in the ass to make work. It has a very strong goal and motivation-driven narrative that these big blockbusters have managed to recapture only on a couple exceptions ever since. Someone even made a full video about that.
And haunted shores.
Why'd you do that?
At world's end.
We're in the end game now.
It has a villain so legendary and memorable that when people online years later make songs about him and his musical theme, it becomes more popular than the latest hit from your favorite cult leader artist. Same for the hero as well, once again. And also, it has a big bunch of really great comedy that never ceases to amuse.
Always wanted to sail the seas. Forever. Sooner than you think. Sign the roster.
100 souls.
I could go on, but I'm sure you're starting to see where I'm going. When you put all these GOAT components together in one movie, suddenly it doesn't seem like such a joke or a stretch to say that the movie is indeed the GOAT.
Hey! Come on, man! That's too easy!
But the more specific aspect I want to talk about today is Dead Man's Chest being among the best sequels ever made. We've talked about this topic before, but here's a couple more vital features of a sequel that's worthy of existing: continuation, escalation, and dynamic evolution. If you don't have these, you don't have a good sequel, not even if the movie on its own is good. So here's how the sequel.
Little seasoning, eh?
The first key sequel strength here is that the efforts and successes that the previous movie was about are continued to be the new challenges and obstacles that the sequel is about. For example, Captain Jack's defining objective in the first movie was to reclaim his captainship of the Black Pearl and this way be able to sail the seas as a man who is truly free. And since he now has those things here, they aren't just forgotten in the background as if they suddenly don't mean anything anymore. It's not like, well, now he just has the pearl, whatever. Instead, those things are given a new defining meaning. Turns out that because Jack is out there captaining the Black Pearl, he owes someone the greatest debt in form of his soul.
You've been captain of the Black Pearl for 13 years. That was our agreement.
Turns out that because Jack is out there sailing the seas as a free man, he's a target to a new governing power that seeks to snuff out his kind.
Sparrow is a dying breed. Jack must find his place in the new world or perish.
In other words, the defining challenges of the sequel can exist only thanks to the defining challenges of the predecessor. If Jack didn't get the Black Pearl last time along with the freedom it grants, the sequel couldn't function this way. And the reason the sequel does function this way is because it uses all that main stuff from last time, which is much better than if all that main stuff was just left out of the new equation as if suddenly what happened last time isn't that important. As another example to build on this, look at Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann. In the first movie, Will's main objective was to help Jack Sparrow in order to rescue Elizabeth from Barbossa and in the process get together with her. And in the sequel, that very thing is what becomes the new obstacle. Since Will and Elizabeth both assisted Jack together, a new governing power shows up to interrupt their love and use it against them. Will gets pressured to act against Jack to save the woman he's about to marry.
You and your fiancée face the hangman's noose.
Bring back that compass, or there's no deal.
Whereas Elizabeth pressures herself into the mix to ensure the safety of the man she fell in love with.
I'm listening intently.
Once again, this is a new form continuation of what happened previously, and it can happen only because of what happened previously. It's a step forward. And so the point is that your sequel cannot just forget the defining events of the predecessor and do something entirely else. It has to continue them. You know, Norrington's objective in the first movie was to capture a bad batch of pirates, which very much included Captain Jack. And since he failed to do so, since he failed to get the life he felt like he was destined for, it's not like that's just tossed in the back like whatever. No, the consequences of it are very much in the driver's seat here. He's lost his command, he's lost his life, and this time his journey is about trying to reclaim all that at any cost. It's not a step backwards or sideways or in place, it's a continued step onward. Because if your sequel doesn't continue what the predecessor was mostly about and deal with the ramifications of it all, then it very easily becomes so disconnected that it doesn't even feel like a proper sequel as much as it feels like a spin-off. In order for number 2 to matter, number 1 has to matter within it. The second key sequel strength here is that everything is escalated to feel bigger than before in order to make this feel like a step up rather than down. For example, last time the main villain was a cursed crew of living dead pirates, which is a level so far above the norm that the new villain can't just be a whatever pirate from down the street. Okay, so then what can you do? How can you go above a pirate crew of living dead who sail the sea? Well, how about a supernatural crew that literally represents the sea and is captained by a humanoid squid who controls the fate of all who die at sea?
Do you feel death?
How about that squid captain has a water monster pet that you can in some form find in pretty much every religion and culture? How about the captain himself possesses such an intimidating aura that even the fearless Jack Sparrow is so afraid of him that for a moment he doesn't have a witty response?
Oh.
Yeah, now we're on to something. Now it feels like in every technical aspect we're going above the villain of yesterday. As a different example to better showcase this, look at the main governing power here. In the first movie, that power was held by this port city that was in favor of the royal crown. Whereas this time, that governing power is held by a company that represents the royal crown because in many ways it is just as influential, to a point where the crown can't help you.
You have no authority to arrest this man.
Arrest her.
In other words, the foundational power level in a sequel feels to be far above what it was in the predecessor, so much so that the man who used to wield that power is now about as powerful as the pigs in the mud around him. As another kind of example to hammer this in, look at it on individual level, look at personal stakes. Jack Sparrow previously was trying to reclaim the Black Pearl, okay, whereas here he's immediately made a target for the Kraken, which immediately puts his life on the line.
It comes now.
Will Turner previously was trying to save a hot girl that he liked, okay, whereas here he's trying to save the love of his life, his future wife, not to mention the man who gave him life.
I take this with a promise. I'll find a way to sever Jones's hold on you.
Norrington previously was trying to set himself up for a good life, whereas here he's desperately trying to have a life. The Grim Reaper previously concerned only a certain type of an individual, whereas here the Reaper has come to clean house. Elizabeth previously was willing to go as far as to pretend to be fainting, whereas here things have gone so far and bad that she's willing to murder someone. Overall, the entire movie from top to bottom is escalation. It feels way bigger than its predecessor, which is necessary for a sequel to be able to justify its own existence. Things don't always have to be bigger than before, but they do always have to feel bigger than before. Because if they don't, then you don't have a sequel that is a step up to the next level, but rather a less valuable spin-off that exists on the lower step in the middle. In order for number 2 to exist, it by definition has to be larger than 1. And as to the decimals in between, they most often feel so insignificant that we don't usually even include them in our everyday language.
12 fives.
12 fives. Call me a liar. We're up the bed.
You're a liar.
The third key sequel aspect here is that the dynamics of characters and the relationships between them are evolved into new versions of themselves to make them feel fresh and three-dimensional. Captain Jack, for example, was very confident and ever in control in the first movie.
My blood.
It's not possible.
Not probable.
So to show another side of him, that confident control is immediately taken away. Suddenly he doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know what he wants, he can't make everything work out right away. This time he's so at his wit's end that he gets excited about a jar of dirt as his protector, which in of itself leads to very offbeat and iconic moments.
I got a jar of dirt, I got a jar of dirt, and guess what's inside it? Enough!
But most importantly showcases a new side of Jack, and this way opens him up into a more of a layered person.
Bring her about! No, leave it! Run!
As another example to explain this more, look at the relationship between Will and Elizabeth. In the first movie, it was about them liking each other from a distance and about the question of will they end up together or won't they. Whereas this time, this dynamic evolves into another version. Now it's about the question of will their bond be able to withstand the strain put up by the new sides that we learn about them. Will is introduced to his father, who he swears to free at any cost due to sadness and guilt, which in the process pulls him away from Elizabeth. Elizabeth is introduced to the concept of playing outside the rules like a pirate in order to survive, which in the process pulls her away from Will. It's the same characters and relationship as last time, but like version 2.0. This may seem obvious in hindsight, but it has taken a toll on many massive projects, like for instance the third Uncharted game. The second game was about Nate and Elena trying to repair their broken relationship.
Oh, Elena Fisher. Last year's model.
That's cute.
Whereas the third game was about that again, them trying to repair their broken relationship.
You're still wearing it.
Yeah, I am. It helps in this part of the world.
Oh, really?
Don't flatter yourself.
Which felt very pointless and stagnated. And it didn't have to, because there's so many different versions of conflict to mine from this type of a relationship, as was shown by the much more layered fourth game, which was about a healthy relationship being put to the ultimate test.
Elena, wait!
You lied to me for weeks. If you were killed, I wouldn't have even known about it.
And once more, you'll find the same evolution on individual level as well. Norrington in the first movie was a flawless officer wielding the power of the Royal Navy, whereas here he's a powerless drunk who works on a pirate ship. Will in the first movie was the one who always felt out of place with those around him, whereas here it's more so the other way around. Elizabeth in the first movie was mostly a damsel in distress caught in strings pulled by pirates, whereas here she literally is the one pulling the strings. She is very much a pirate. All of which is crucial to prove your fictional characters as realistic three-dimensional people. Maybe you have time to show just a couple layers of that in the first movie, but when you get more time in the sequel, there better be something deeper in. Maybe Will's existence does revolve exclusively around Elizabeth at first.
Governor, we will establish their most likely course.
That's not good enough!
And who's that? Oh, it's Sam!
But in the second round, he has to have something more than just a girl he's simping for.
Guard the chest!
Maybe the bad guy comedic reliefs are just bad guy comedic reliefs at first, but in the second round, the source of that comedy has to be dynamically different. And so the point is that you cannot allow your characters or relationships to stagnate and get stuck in a boring box. You have to let them out more and more every time. Real people may seem one way at first, but there's always another version in them that you see later on. It's just about making sure that those versions are in line with the characters themselves. Captain Jack becoming a useless drunk for an entire movie, that's not Captain Jack.
My disappointment
is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
But Captain Jack losing his mojo at the start of a movie and then gradually rising back up to reclaim it,
Hello, Beastie.
that reveals a new side of who Captain Jack is. That's the difference between a movie that's a great number 2 in a franchise and a movie that's just a number 2.